This is Dennis Rawling speaking. I am sure you remember the fun we all had listening to Derek Blaster Bates at the symposium we held last March 29th at the Stratford-on-Avon Hilton, which was hosted by my company Redditch Controls, jointly with Morgan Shipston and Marston Paxman, our sister companies in IMI. We had this record made so that you, our guests and customers in the brewing industry, would be able to recall and enjoy again the entertainment and fellowship of that day. May I then, on behalf of my colleagues, wish you a Happy New Year in 1978 and a continuing and rewarding association with our companies in the future. Now then, stand by for blasting.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the clap. I've been trying to avoid it all my life. I looked on the menu. It said the things we do with CO2. That's the bloody ICI for you, all right? They've been giving me a load of bullshit for 30 years. And they're still overcharging me for the explosive. I've been trying to give talks. I mean, I can see you're not too strong-willed about this. I see you brought the ladies in. Cocked it up for the lads again. We had a similar do in Coventry about 4 months ago. We had 500 engineers there. They weren't brewers, they were engineers. And they've got to be an engineer these days to be a bloody brewer, I should think. And we had 4 ladies on the front row. I thought, how are we going to get rid of them? I tried my opening gambit. I like your hairdo, missus. Have you come on a motorbike? That didn't move them. And the other one was a big girl and got a miniskirt drawn up by a navel somewhere. I said, what a funny place to keep a bloody hedgehog, and that didn't move her either. So I thought, to hell with it, let them get on with it. But to give talks and explosives to the Inner Wheel, the Ladies' Circle, the Towns Women's Guild, or the WI, it's bloody nigh impossible. And I was at one a few months ago, and I pulled that out. And one of them went, ooh! I said, no, madam, it isn't one of those. I must have been holding it with the 4-fingered paw. Some cross-grained twit designed this for a youth of 19 to stick on the end of his weapon. I'll rephrase that, sir. On the end of his rifle. And approach a 60-ton tank with all the guns blazing. Can you imagine this tool stood there with this on the end of his gun? And when he pulls the trigger, it goes floof. And it'll just about make that wall from here. You can't hit anything with it. It says it takes a determined man. And by Christ, you've got to be determined. If you do get excited and fire at one at close range, there's a hell of a bang and the fins come back and make chips of you. So you have no chance either way. You can bet the fellow that designed this never fired one in anger. You'd be far better off waiting for the tank to stop. Tap on the lid. Let him get out. Then club the bastard to death with it. And you'd stand about as much chance. So much for the Energa grenade. Now, the other bit of ordnance I have in the bag is the 1.5-inch baton anti-riot, or rubber bullet. And you will notice the ministry in their wisdom will put a flange on it. Now, 480 feet a second, if you're bending down picking up a piece of concrete, they can shoot you with this without breaking the skin. It is what is known as widening the circle of your friend. And it leaves a nasty rubbery taste in your mouth. And a small tear will trickle down your right cheek. Highly prized at the moment. These are picked up off the streets of Belfast and sold to Western Germany for 50 new pence a time. They insert a small battery and flog them back to us at 10 guineas a throw. And we won the war. No wonder the swines are revaluing. Now, the other bit of ordnance I have in the bag, some of you old soldiers recognise this as the 36 grenade or the Mills bomb. A useful little bomb. You merely pull the pin out, let the handle go, chuck it in the room and shout, share that bugger amongst you. Useful to me, especially when I go to the Rotary Club luncheons. They get 3 parts cut on the brown Windsor soup and start throwing the buns at me. But I've noticed if I lob one of these back, it seems to steady him up for 5 minutes. I did hear tell of the IRA got 5 cases of these. They were chucking them at the lads in Northern Ireland, and they were pulling the pins out and chucking them back. or you can't win them all. I did hear tell. And Seamus was saying to Michael, he said, now do you work them little things? He said, well, you pull the pin out and you let the handle go. He said, then you've got 10 seconds. And he pulls the pin out, he lets the handle go, and he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which can be bloody painful. Then you wonder, at the Dublin Swimming Gala last June, it said, owing to the drought, lanes 1 and 2 will be closed. Now, here's an interesting spectacle for you. Just look at this. 18 months ago, that was a perfectly good, functional .38 revolver. You could shoot somebody with it. Then one of the chaps started reading the leaflets put out by ICI, DuPont, Dynamit Nobel, RWS, all the other people that manufacture propellants and explosives. And reading down the list, he read where bulleted rifle powder burnt slower than shotgun powder, because shotgun powder's only shoving an ounce and eighth of shot up a smooth bore barrel. You haven't got to have too many whiskies when you say that, you can drop yourself in the shite. Anyway. But reading down where the bulleted rifle powder burnt slower, much slower, because the bullet's got to engage in the rifling, and it's got to give it a chance to take off up the barrel and give it a bit of extra space for the pressure. If you get fast burning powder, you get a quick pressure curve in the barrel, and instead of the bolt coming out the end of the barrel, the bolt comes back, goes in the side of your chops and sticks out the back of your neck. But being a clever little swine, he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll load my pistol cartridge with shotgun powder and the bullets will come out faster. They did, but they came out sideways. And now all he's left with is that and one rather large swollen domestic finger on his right hand. Now, for the sporting gentry amongst you, the ordinary 12-bore cartridge, if I can find one. And that's the ordinary 12-bore cartridge. This is an 8-bore cartridge, which is fatter, it's longer, there's more powder in it and more shot in it. And you load up a double-barreled 8-bore with 2 of these and pull one of the triggers, there's more of a thrutch when it goes off, as you can well imagine. And they do say, if you load up a double-barreled 8-bore with 2 of these and pull both triggers by mistake, it can interfere with your sex life. We had a young fella do it down the back of Elworth, where I live, in the swampy parts of Cheshire. We have get these great flashes there, you know. Because they pump in the brine from underneath us, you see, and it makes these great pools. And we're all lowering down slowly. And a flight of geese come on one of these pools, and this young fella run for his grandfather's double-barreled 8-bore and loosed both barrels off at once. There was a hell of a bang, and it blew him flat on his back. When they picked him up, a small lump had appeared behind each ear. And it took physiotherapy at Crewe a week to massage his knackers back down again. It's the vibrations what do it. Now, so much for the propellants. Now we come on to the high explosives. And this here is a stick of gelignite which I've broken in two. You look, it's very much like marzipan. Useful explosive. Sorry about that, sir. Did it go in his soup? And a useful. I blow up tree stumps with it, knock down these chimneys with it, and all sorts. Good water-resistant explosive. But if I want to cut some metal, it was like a friend was asking me not long ago. If I want a lot of power, then I use this. Now, this is not a bit of wet horse muck. All you'll notice it's of Monday morning, lads. Anyway, it's more of a rubbery texture, submarine blasting gelatin, and after this, you're on nuclear fission. This is the most powerful of the conventionals. It's a nice way of putting it. But it'll blow you to shite 3 times faster than gelignite. And I need it for cutting through metal or deep shot holes in granite or whatever. And to bring about this phenomena, or the burning speed, called molecular disintegration of this explosive, we need the electric or the plain azide type detonator. And we stuff this in the base of it. At times, I have set these things off. I noticed the gentleman on the left just moved up another foot. But it wouldn't save him, I'll tell you that. And I was at the Round Table Society in the Station Hotel at Stafford, and says, come on, Blaster, make a bang now you're here. So we shoved one of these in the fireplace and wrapped it up in the Evening Sentinel and detonated it. And there was a hell of a bang, and the paper flew out. And then there was rumblings from up the flue. And just then, 100 of black talcum powder come whoosh, straight across the broad loom carpet. And everyone was wearing black socks. And the manager ran in shouting, out, 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 the lot of you, and take that bloody idiot with you. And they have their meetings in the Swan now. But to try and explain this phenomena to you, we insinuate the detonator up the orifice we have made in the base of the explosive. And you've seen John Wayne jump off his nag and run up the side of a mountain. He's only been gone 5 minutes, and he runs back down again, and in the middle of the trail is a 60 guinea Beethoven exploder. They didn't make them in those days, but he's got one. It's the same one that Errol Flynn used when he won Burma for us. And he pulls the handle up and pushes it down, and there's a hell of a bang, and the mountain disappears. It's all done in 5 minutes. It doesn't tell you about the 6 months it's taken shoveling the stuff underneath there to blow it up. That's why everybody thinks I'm running about in a Bentley. But the electrical impulse flies up the wire, this goes off with a hot flash and a bang, and this starts to burn. But it's not the sort of stuff you would light the fire with. The sticks don't seem to catch. It starts burning at 9 miles a second, which is knocking on. Mind you, they have a bloody good fire next door. Now, there are other ways of doing it. I mean detonating the explosive. And the other way is with what we call the plain azide detonator and the blue sump fuse. And this is the blue sump fuse, and that is the plain azide detonator. And before we can bring these into play, we need what is known in the money belt of the county I live in, a pair of secateurs. Now, these are secateurs. In Sandbach, where we live, we call them dubbing shears. We don't speak French down there, and we haven't joined the common market yet. But we need these to clip the end off the fuse in case there's been any capillary action. And I did hear tell of a famous horticulturalist who got a lad about 8-year-old and bought the kid a pair of dubbing shears for his birthday to get him interested in the job, the green fingers and horticulture. And the kid was going around the garden, he was snipping off the tops of the old roses and the old poppies, and he pruned the rose trees down to that. He pruned everything prunable. And the old man happened to be lying in the deck chair reading the news of the world with his new Bermuda shorts on. And the kid walked past and think, God, that needs pruning. And went snip. He didn't feel it for a minute because they're rather sharp, you know. And his mother ran out the house saying, look what you've done to your feather. She said, you've ruined him. You've ruined him. He said, it's all right, Mum, it'll grow again. I've left the bulbs in. Now, we need this to clip clip the end off the fuse, and insinuate the detonator on the end of the fuse and crimp it on with the approved nippers. Then taking your non-ferrous metal prodder, if you have one. Mine's a screwdriver. I can't afford a non-ferrous metal prodder, they're too damn expensive. So I get a 410 screwdriver, and we prod a hole in the base of the explosive and place the detonator up the orifice we have made. Now once again we have a blast bomb, but this time we have to light the fuse. There's no prattling about with exploders. And if we wanted to serve in action one of these walls, we would merely place it against the wall with a bit of muck around it, light the fuse, go away, wait for the bang, and there you have your serve in action the wall. It's what we call a quickie in the trade. And I was explaining this to some gentlemen in a streamlined gin palace the other side of the Potteries. And we had one at the back that knew all about it. As a blaster, how do you go on underwater? Well, of course you get wet. He said, I mean the fuels. I said, oh, the fuels. I said, well, this fuse will burn in 90 fathoms of water. He said, how do you know? He must have thought I'd been down there to have a look. I was reckoning if you're going to act like one, wear a funny hat. I said, we've made exhaustive tests. On one job I was working on, we had a chap there with 23 that could stand 23 pints of Guinness in his gut all at one time. And that was the good Guinness. So we loaded him up, lit the fuse, and got him to piddle on it. And he couldn't put it out. Not only that, he didn't even rot the fuse. So from that we assumed it would burn in 90 fathoms of water, which I think is a fair test. Now, some people have problems with explosives. Take the Germans in the last war, for instance. They got a bag full like this, put it under the table. Hitler was standing there and missed the swine at that range. I thought, by Christ, they're going to lose. I did hear not long ago of 3 of the ICI scientists doing tests on a trath down in Welsh Wales Duco, down near Penrhyn Dydreth. And they were taking sticks of gelignite, submarine blasting gelatin, gelatin dynamite, aluminite, abelite, bobinite, rockite. They might have had a jar of bloody Marmite for all I know. Nobel 704, 828 and 905 and all the other crap they could manufacture. And taking bits of fuse, detonators, stuffing these in, lighting the fuse and tossing them into the river. The object of the exercise, they said, was from the column of water thrown up, it gave them some idea of the different strengths of the explosives. Now, can you imagine it? Well, it's a bloody good excuse to get out the factory for the afternoon. Well, the first one had blown a hole in the bottom, and it might have had an undulating bottom. We haven't seen one of them for a year or two. But there they are, with their little white suits on, with silicones written over the back. It's a polish. And fiberglass helmets on in case he blew a salmon out, it hit them on the head, you see. While they're prattling about throwing these things in, they didn't notice the local sportsman walking across these water meadows behind them with his shotgun over his arm, doing a bit of rough shooting with his black Labrador dog. And as he come up behind them, he saw one of these clowns throw one in, plop. And the dog saw it as well. And thought, my God, they've shot something at last. So it's in. And it's out again. You've got a black lab retrieving 4 ounces of gelignite with a fuse burning down. Nobody wanted to know. Because when they retrieve it, they deliver it 2 hand. And 2 hand with a black lab sat on its backside with its head up. 2 hand is about there. Which in the event of that going off, will make your eyes water. And one's hiding behind one and t'other behind the other. In the end, they're trying to crawl up the back of each other's jacket. Got down that one very well, don't you think, chap? Because it was dark up there. And soon as the animal wasn't going to go away, they took the obvious course. They took to flight, shouting stones at it, shouting, Go away when? Well, it meant go away. Sounded more like a Russian word that finished with off. And you can imagine these idiots all running along the river bank with the dog lobbing behind them with this in its mouth. It cost the ICI 50 quid for a new dog. Now, in our house, these days, on a Saturday night, about 10:30, two things can happen. It used to be three. But we finished pegging the rug. I can see you've pegged the rug. There's some rumbuggers about. Anyway, and now either the telly breaks down or the bobbies will ring up and say, we have found some explosive. They don't seem to find it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or Friday because there's a good chance it might be out. They always seem to find it 10:30 on Saturday. I rather suspect they find it on Wednesday and save it till Saturday. And in the early spring of last year, they rang me up, 10:30, the witching hour, Saturday night. We have found some explosive again. I said, oh, aye, 10:30, you're dead on the nail. And he said, yes, the constable will come round in the motor car and you can go with him and pick it up. Because he's already had his orders. Don't you touch it, lad. Let that bloody idiot pick it up. You're valuable. So he came round in the patrol car and we went off from Elworth, where I live, near Sandbach, up to Davenham, which is on the fringe of the money belt near Northwich. And we drove into the yard, gable-ended house, bit of flat roof on the side, and the two green doors in the yard, coal house or outhouse. Might have been the shite house, sir, I don't know. And I said to him, which one's it in? He said, the coal house. I thought, that makes a nice change. Because feeling round the bend for things like this, you don't know what you're going to come up with. They don't all tick and they don't always bubble. So he said, it's in the coal house. I said, well, shine your light. I said, it's bloody dark in here. And it is in the coal house, early spring, 10:30 on a Saturday night. So he shone his light, and lying on top of the coal was a stick of gelignite, just like this. There was no paper around it, no wires coming out, no fuse, nothing. I thought this one hasn't detonated when they've been ripping a bit of rock to get at the coal seam, and it's got shoveled up with the coal. So I pick it up and I bring it out, and I'm stood in the yard with it, cogitating. I thought, that's funny. One end seemed softer than the other, and slightly tapered. And just then, I heard a deep-throated woof woof in the house. So I said to the bobby, what sort of a dog have they got? Because you don't know what's going to fang you around those mansions at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. He said, it's one of them there Great Danes. He said, it's like a young donkey. Well, if you look at a happy Great Dane retreating, and look at the diameter of that, take it into consideration also the length of the dog's back. Because the dog only has one pudding, it's straight through, you know. Why, you've never seen him run against a high wind with the mouth open. A Great Dane would pass 3 of these in tandem. It is now 5 to 11 on Saturday night, and I know I have a handful of dog shite. Now, you may think this is funny, but it has cost the government a certain amount of money to take me there and pick it up. And the Home Office man's been walking round it for 3 days. Then they call me a bloody idiot. I think they do it to me because I look simple. Now, a year last July, a gentleman said to me, will you come and knock down our chimney stack? I said, certainly. And not an unusual request. They have knocked 326 of the buggers down in the last 6 years, so we've let the daylight in somewhere. And I did one the other week. Old Bess, the oldest one in Lancashire, had to go underneath the national grid, so of course they were all there waiting for a bloody tragedy. So I was going to set fire to Lancashire over at Scammerdale there at Up Holland. And we got it all prepared there. got to just come back on itself and dodge under the wires, and 76,000 quid worth of new machinery. The other side of the wall, it got to go up the yard, and there was a bloke stood there, one of the ace reporters, I think it was the Liverpool Echo. He said, have you any idea which way it's going? I said, well, if I hadn't, lad, I'd be pressing the tit in Abu Dhabi. I wouldn't be standing there talking to silly buggers like you. Oh, it's amazing. Thick as 14 lavatory doors. So, anyway, this is the sort of thing you get all the time, you know. And you do this and that and the other. And this chap said, will you come and knock down our chimney? And I said, say so well. I said, where is it? It's always as well to know. Never knock one down that's still smoking. Doesn't half leave them in a bloody mess, I'll tell you. He said, well, we're at Sutton Weaver. Sutton Weaver. And when you go from Prodsham on the road to Warrington, down the main road, you go over the swing bridge, turn left, and you're parallel with the River Weaver under a big railway arch, and the road sweeps up to the right, and on the triangular piece of ground is a dirty little works, where that bag is, and up by the side is a chimney stack. And when I got there, he said, that's the one there. I said, I thought it would be, because there isn't another one till you get to Chester, you see. Educated men, these. I said, where do you want it, Gaffer, other than across the end of the bloody works? He said, we want it dropping in that old pit down there, and there's a dirty old pit hole full of pram wheels and bloody big bulrushes about 15 foot high with big furry tops on. I thought, that'll give me the greatest of pleasure. That meant 1,300 ton of bricks is going to go in that pit at a fair velocity. That means all the shite and bulrushes are going to come out at a fair velocity. That means that everybody in Sutton Weaver gets a bulrush. And you think you've got them. But it happened to be the first Monday a year last July, which was overcast, hot, puthery day. Hot as hell it was. And I got to drill 25 holes in the base of that thing, 4 foot 6 deep. All morning, 50-pound weight rock drill, and it's shaking shite out of me. And with this hot weather, by 12 o'clock, the sweat is dropping off the end of my beak, and my shirt is halfway up my back. And, you know, I am distinctly antisocial. One of the chaps came by and said, how are you, Blast? And you say, off. You're antisocial then. And I'm still drilling this at 2 o'clock. And a damn big lorry come in the yard behind me and upended on a patch of concrete, and off the back of it slithered 18 ton of cow's bellies, horses' hooves and donkey's queer things. Oh, I have never seen a pile of offal like it in my life, and the stench nearly blew me hat off. So with that, I approached the management. Like, what is the game? Or something like that. I said, why have you dumped all that offal behind me on a hot day when I'm trying to do you a favour and get rid of your chimney stack? And he looked at it. He said, oh, he said, we process that. I said, what, that? I said, what do you make out of that pile of offal down there? He said, well, that, amongst other things, goes to make jellies. I said, those red and green and yellow wobbly jellies? He said, but of course, I've not been to a kid's party since a year last July. I walked round them all Christmas poking them with a long stick. And the green one grabbed it. At the second week in July, a gentleman said to me, will you come and knock down our chimney stack? I said, where are you at? He said, we're at the old, I said, I bought the old bone works up at Tattenhall near Chester. I am renting the properties off, and I've got to have the chimney stack knocked down because it is dangerous, and the ministry are down my throat. I suppose that means a lot if the ministry is down your throat. And when I went up there, there's a chimney stack stuck up there, and there's a big black shed here, and he'd bought these various properties, and the canal is 4 foot 6 away. I said, where do you want it, across the cut? He said, no. He said, don't talk so bloody silly. He said, it's the height of the season. They get those big long boats from Tarpley, and it costs them 100 quid, and it takes them 4 days to get to Chester in one. And they have to come past here. You can do it in 15 minutes in your car. He said, no. He said, it'll have to go parallel with the canal. So I'm drilling it on Thursday. It's got to come down 12 o'clock on Friday. And drilling it, the bloke standing watching me all day, eyes like chapel hat pegs. I thought he's died. Stood there. And at 4 o'clock I went home, and the next morning I went early to try and beat him to it, and he was waiting for me. And he watched me put all the explosive in, link it all up, and at 10 to 12 he came across to me and he spoke. And he said, "What about my shed?" I said, "I didn't know it was your shed, and what about it?" I said, "It's going to drop down there." I said, "Why are you worried about that shed?" He said, "I've got 360 pigs in there." I said, "I'm glad you told me. Because in 10 minutes' time there's going to be a bang. Get 6 extra wheelbarrows ready. And don't, whatever you do, stand behind the boar pig when it goes off. Because if it coughs, you're in trouble." But people sometimes say to me, "How do you get in the job in the first place?" Because it's a peculiar job, blowing things up for 30 years. That's all I've been doing, not much else. And when the war finished, I went back to Rolls-Royce for my job back, because I started in the tool room in Rolls-Royce in 1938. And then I joined the Air Force, and I was with them and the 6th Airborne for a time, and then went back to Rolls-Royce for my job back, and there was some nebulous prat sitting behind the desk. And he said, "The war's over, you know." Somebody could have told him, you see. I said, "I know, you don't think I bought this bloody suit, do you?" Mine fit where it touched. It got arms on it like a Chinese mandarin's gown, but very tight round the crutch. It meant you could fly in it, but by Christ you don't walk in it. And then he said, "We're cutting down, you know." He didn't exactly make me feel wanted. Well, during the war, I'd learnt 2 trades, how to fly airplanes and how to blow things up. I thought, it'll have to be the latter, I can't afford an airplane. So I got an XWD aerial motorbike with a couple of panniers on the back, and I used to go prattling about blowing up tree stumps for these farmers around South East Cheshire and North Shropshire and North Derbyshire, and doing a few here and a few there, and wherever I could get a job. And then I got a job blowing up 8 acres of tree stumps for an excitable lady down at Newport in Solop. Big excitable woman she was. When women first started wearing those jeans and hers were purple. I thought, by Christ, I'm back in the Japanese theatre of war, you know. Anyway, and I started blowing up these tree stumps for her. "Dear Bigger Banger, come and blow us up." And she got some other idiot to start blowing them up at the other end. Now, you get 2 hard up blasters in 8 acres of ground, it can be dangerous, you know. And he started aiming his at me. So I started aiming mine back at him. Like, "Give him a broadside, Jim lad, arr." And this went on for 3 weeks, and then I got a job over at Nottingham, tunnelling under 6 pair of houses in some rock in a 4'6" heading. I always remember lodging in the end house. Pauline, I shall never forget her. Biological phenomena, that woman. And I was only on marmalade butties. Anyway. When I got back, my eyes had gone half-inch back in my head. And I went back to this farm to carry on blowing up the tree stumps for this excitable lady. And when I got there, she said, "He's gone, you know, Mr. Bates, he's gone." I said, "Who's gone?" "Mrs. Cullum." Funny bloody name. She said, "The other gentleman that was blowing up the tree stumps." I said, "Well, where's he gone?" She said, "Well, we don't rightly know. But it's taken the council 4 days to fill the hole up in the side of the road." See me going home one night, and his tractor end had dropped off, and he dropped into the field, and the shock of his van hitting the field had set off the detonators, and these had caused what is known in the trade as sympathetic detonation. The lot had gone off. And at 4 miles a second, you haven't got time to get out. And I do believe they found part of his lower abdomen 1,000 yards down the field with his shoelace threaded through it. Like one gentleman said to me, said, "It might seem bloody funny to you, but how would you like your boot shoved up your nose at 4 miles a second?" I said, "Well, there's one thing about it, sir, it's quick. And you don't even get the taste." Now, at this particular time, I was having problems with my bank manager. He was a right little Burke, this one. And I used to go in there at 3 minutes to 3 to cash my cheque on a Friday afternoon for 30 bob, hoping he'd gone home. And he used to wait behind to catch me. And he'd say, "I want a word with you," with a counter full of people, and everybody knew what it was about. And he'd go in the office and he'd say, "It's about this overdraft. It is not getting any less, it's £87. Well, I don't think he should have lent it me in the first place. I thought he'd give it me, you see. And then after 9 months, he wanted it back. And after 9 months of this, he was very near striking. And then about 3 weeks after poor old Scriven blew himself up, he caught me again in the bank. 3 minutes to 3. And he says, come in. Come in. I thought, poor sod, the strain's been too much for him. He's turned homosexual. And he said, sit down, which allayed my fears a bit. And then he said, we at the bank are going to loan you a further £40. We are going to get you on 4 wheels. Try it today, 40 quid, and buy yourself a car. Wouldn't buy you the hubcap. He said, and with what you can get for that death machine, that was my motorbike. So I got 35 quid for the bike, and the £40 he lent me gave me £75, and I bought a clapped out 1937 Ford 8 van, which was black and rust. And at that time, my missus was expecting the twins. I wanted the back fence a light brown and the gate a beige. And I'd got 2 pots of paint left over. I thought, I'm not going to waste them. I'll mix them together and brush paint that van with it to keep the weather out. And I did, and it come out a horrible dog shite colour, some of the colour of that wall. And they used to call it the flying shite. Now, last year, I had a Volvo, which is exactly the same colour. But they call that Safari Yellow. I think it was something to do with the price. Anyway, I got my van, and I was prattling about there, and there was 2 lads down at the next village to us, is Wheelock. We call it Wellock. And they live down in a hollow, as I say, they're lower than the dead now, they're subsiding with the brine. And they'd got a little van, and they were going around lettering buildings, putting firms' names up on buildings. So they had a van full of letters, A, B, C, D, E letters. And they were lettering this building, Studley and Pollux Limited. And one was up the ladder. He shouted down, hey Alf, I finished the Studley, I'm going to start the Pollux now. Took us a pee up. And the other one's rummaging about in the back of the van. He said, we haven't got a P. We've only got a B left. He said, we made a right cock of the London Brick Company then. I think it's something in the soil with them lads down there. Fortunately, we're separated from them. There's some undulating ground with long grass. We call it the jumps. I often take the dog for a walk over there with my 12B40s in the summer. You met him, Jim lad. Anyway, I'd got this van. I thought, what the hell am I going to do now? I'm over the ton. I'll never pay it off. At the bank, I'll have to get into advertising. Well, I'd heard about the Americans selling those long fags that had any bloody backer in it, and that 7-Up, G-Up and Coca-Cola with a bit of advertising. I thought, if I get some leaflets printed and start advertising the job, I'll do more work and therefore get more money. So I had these 500 leaflets printed, as I say, and a friend of mine told me where to stick them. You get friends like that. And another mate of mine was a public health officer at Liverpool at that time, and they'd been having trouble with the Gentleman's Convenience on the Dock Road. You go up to it, round at the half pavement, and he was sitting in his office one lunchtime. He'd done his fag ends and fingernails for that morning, reading Garth in the Mirror. And a lady came in his office and dropped her hat on his desk and said, what are you going to do about that, Mr. Inspector? And he could see it was wet. And he put his nose over it and he thought, that's fiddle. You see. He knew the smell immediately because he'd seen him stand in front of a bright fire with corduroys on. I said, well, what had happened, John? Well, it seems she'd been walking past the Convenience, which was on his beat, and the dinner time drunks had been in there, and it'd been the iced up the wall for £0.50. And as she come past, somebody had made the air brick all over her hat, you see. So it gave me an idea. I thought, they've got nothing else better to do. I'll stick my leaflets at 6'4" in the Gentleman's Conveniences at these cattle auctions. Because when they've had 4 salty pork pies and half a gallon of tea, they've got to go in there sooner or later. Then they can stand back, read all about it. Tree stumps blown up, concrete shattered, rock trenches cut out, pits cleaned out, shite shifted. And then wait outside and approach those that come out with wet boots. They were obviously the more interested parties. And then one morning, I was at Crewe Cattle Auction and I was approached by a large gentleman, had the rat catcher trousers and the old moleskins, leaning well back on his pelvis. like this here, rummaging up and down front of his trousers. And somebody said, by God, old George is going at it a bit this morning. You know, they got his new truss and a small parasite in his crutch, you see. Hey, young fella, he said, I want a word with thee. I said, what's your trouble, master? He said, it's my pit. He said, it's our septic tank as well. When they modernised his farmhouse in 1895, they turned all the drains into this old marl down the field. And seepage had taken place for the first 65 years. Then it must have got choked up with 10 tons of tinted toilet tissue. You can get it from Thomas Tucker's of Tutbury. And we'd had one of our summers. And he said, I've had a very nasty letter from the council. He said, the effluviant, and he's like this here again, you know, rummaging about. Somebody said, look at the angle of his back. He said, he'll fall on his backside in a minute. Somebody said, no, he won't, not without he takes his hands out of his pocket. He'd obviously had no toys as a child. Anyway. And he said, and it had rained for 3 weeks, and he said, and the effluviant, I like the effluviant bit, is coming out of the pit and going in the ditch, and as the ditch went into the stream, and the stream meandered through Cheshire and went under the bridges, the methane gas given off was putting the roadman asleep on the end of his brush. And they didn't like it at Backford Hall. And the gist of the tersely worded note was, keep your shite to yourself. SHYTT could have been printed in Chester. He said, and I've had one of them there machines slinging one of them buckets in, dragging it out. He said, and when it gets it on the bank, he said, it slithers back. He said, I've been wondering, he said, if you could bring some of that there stuff, he said, and blew it out. And he went like that, nearly fell on his bloody back. Nearly did myself there, not wishing to brag. Anyway, and in the next breath, he says, where's it go? I thought, now there's a technical one, where's it go? And when he asks you that, you catch up to the lapels of the jacket, you've all done it. You know, you see, it vaporizes, old chap. What goes up has to come down. No radioactive fallout with it, it's all pure shite. Now the idea is, put plenty in, give it some stick. Get the lot up to 300 feet with a 35-mile-an-hour wind behind it, and then it's anybody's. But you have done the job you have contracted to do. You've shifted it out the pit hole. Never do it on a still day, because it goes up in the air and falls back in the bloody pit again. And you finish up with a pit full of black rice pudding. And don't go to his next door neighbour and charge him for the manure, they don't like it. Especially if Mr. snatching the washing in off the line. Because when those big gobs go hurtling down the field, and especially if they hit blankets, you've heard the old saying, the weeds will drop off one side, and the old green juice will percolate through to the other. And this biological action is nowhere. And he said, I wish he'd come and have a do at it. I said, I shall come, given a 4-6 on the Beaufort scale. Make it sound a little more technical, it's always good for another fiver. And the following Wednesday, I went down to see him, and there was a 35-mile-an-hour wind blowing. And when I got there, I said, where is it, Gaffer? He said, come down the field and we'll show thee. And we went down this field, and there is a pit hole about the size, twice the size of this room, and the top of it is like one of Fanny Craddock's meringues gone wrong. There's grummets, gobbets, and excrusions all over. There's a crust on it, 6 inches thick. If you'd got a couple of tennis rackets tied to your feet and took a run at it, you got across without sinking. And what was going on underneath there was anybody's guess. I prodded it with a pike and the swine sneered at me. Shh. Come any close, I'll have you. I thought, by God, it's like one of these Quatermass experiments. If this gets out one night and interferes with the cat, I've won with claws as well. We had a bloke in Sandbetches out on 250 quid bail for interfering with a goat. The other bugger got 3 years for acting the goat. Anyway. So we got the £5 sticks on the end of the cortex and tossed one in, clunking it upended, and something drew it down, and a big green bubble come up and winked at me. And we heard a most evil chuckle as the swine swallowed it. And we tossed another in, the same thing, the bubble, the wink, and the chuckle. And in all, we got a £100 weight in there. Now, £100 weight of gel ignite in 22-foot of muck is equal to a £500 free drop bomb. You see, high explosives in water, rice pudding, or effluviant multiplies its shockwave 4 times. You get what they call a hydraulic in effect. Or the other one, sir. You can make the test for yourselves on Sunday. You take 2 plates, one of crisps and one of rice pudding, and take your right hand and go whack on the crisps first of all. This lulls them into a sense of false security. And you'll always find that mother-in-law wants a closer look. Then taking the same hand, we go whack on a big plate of rice pudding. And even the pot ducks on the wall get a bit. Now you get the same reaction with a 100-pound weight of gelignite in 22-foot of muck. It will spread it all over the parish. This is why we want a 35-mile-an-hour wind blowing. At least we know where 95% is going to go. Having got it all in, all the leads together, bit of fuse, detonator, bit of wire. I thought that'll stop him sneezing in church. Said to old Thorley, I said, here, Eddie Gaffer. He said, what about him down there? And down the field there's a bloke doing a bit of edge brushing. She loves me. She loves me not. 2 snaps with a blunt hook at 1 twig. Not very excited about it. Dark-haired sort of a youth. Put the blade on the ground, sat on the handle, used it like a shooting stick and starts combing his hair. I thought, he's a lovely lad, that. Is he one of ours or one of theirs? But at that time there was a lot of ex-German and Italian prisoners of war about. I said, he'll have to shift, he's going to get the lot. We're taking 4,500 ton of vaporized effluent up to 300 feet with a 35-mile-an-hour wind blowing straight towards him. He's 100 yards down the field. We have his range to a yard. He has no chance. And he said, will you go and tell him I've got a gammy leg? And I walked down the field and said to this bloke, you've heard about the shite over Shropshire? I said, we're having one over Cheshire today. Make the funny, laugh it up with the peasants. He turned around, Timberlake Wilder, Tamarai. I thought, Christ, it's too good to miss. I did 100 yards and 11.3 in gumboots. Cut the fuse in 2, that gave him all 12 seconds, lit it, and we ran off the other way, and I noticed old Thorley's leg got better. And 12 seconds later, 4,500 ton rose into the sky. And at 300 feet, it mushroomed out, and a shaft of sunlight hit it. You see all the colours of the starling's wing, the greens and the golds and the browns, light and dark. Then the wind hitting it turned over like an avenging cloud. And we saw the look of horror on his face, like, ah! You can't run at 35 miles an hour with clogs on wet ploughing. He tried. He had to. He started crabbing, but he'd only made 4 crabs. It was visibly gluing him to the deck. It was like paddling through a pool of Bostik. And the second time he turned, his body moved and his feet didn't. And he did himself a mischief. He finished up with a face full of shite and a double hernia. And we looked down the field and through this grey fog, and we saw this gob of frog spawn wriggle and writhe, and it rose up like phoenix arising from the ashes. And he was from a big load of frog spawn. And his first reaction was to go, zzz. And he had a pair of multicoloured gossamer wings. I thought, it's Clemson, the Birdman. And I said to old Thorley, we better go down and see if he's all right. He said, no, stay where you are, lad, let him come to us, keep the bloody wind at your back. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, cheers, all the best.